When you think about the Finger Lakes, you don't always think of Merlot. There isn't that much that's grown, and we happen to have fun with the varietal and make like 5 or 6 different wines. So from our red Merlots to the white Merlot, the upcoming sparkling white Merlot, our port series, which is based on Merlot, and our Merlot Rose, we get the opportunity to work with a great site to make some really exciting wines. So why does the Finger Lakes make so much great rosé? In large part, it has to do with our climate, what the fruit wants to speak to us about, and what it does is combines sugar ripeness with higher levels of natural acid than you see from regions like California, where they'll often amend their wines with acid. That doesn't have to happen here in the Finger Lakes based on our picking decisions. So the 2018 Merlot comes from what would have otherwise been a very challenging vintage. What was interesting and what we found was, even though fruit like Merlot and Cabernet Franc are harvested much later than varietals like Gewürztraminer or Chardonnay, they had a resilience in that vintage. In the sense that when we went out and picked this, we honestly had rarely seen fruit this immaculate. It was just wonderful. And so there wasn't a need for a lot of sorting. There was pick, bring it back to the winery, crush and destem it, get it into the press, and get it into tank. That's how this really beautiful color comes from. It is just from the fact that it only spent a little bit of time with the skins before we went into fermentation. So really nice blueberry and raspberry on the nose. So here's some inside baseball on one of the problems we faced in 2018. Not only was it a difficult growing season, but it got cold really fast. And it got so cold so fast that by mid-November, when this was just starting its journey into fermentation, it was, I think it was like 20 or 17 degrees in the wine cellar. And when it's that cold, things don't want to ferment. So we ended up seeing this wine end up with a bit of a stuck fermentation. And it happened when there was still about 18 grams of sugar left. And there was almost nothing we could do to push it on without causing anything that damaged the wine. We could have put heat belts, and we did for a little bit. But once it had stalled out, we were really happy with how it was tasting. So even though it's got more residual sugar than previous vintages, and even what we would plan on doing in the future, it's still a really beautiful wine. It just has a touch of sweetness to it. And it's interesting how that almost comes through on the nose as well. Not candied, but just the sweetness of fresh fruit. The finish on this wine is really remarkable, and it's amazing. Like, it just keeps drawing out. It's different. So we start with all sorts of great fresh fruit: the strawberries, the blueberries, the raspberries. As I was spitting, though, I mean, we just pull out this vanilla, almost this little bit of nutmeg. To these warm flavors that leave me wanting another sip. So there isn't a lot of this in the library, but it is for sale, and it is delicious. And it is a perfect example of how in the United States, we often drink rosé immediately after the vintage it comes out. But the fact is, rosés can age beautifully as well, particularly kind of those first few years after release. So I would really encourage you to take a taste of our 2018 Merlot Rosé. It's a wonderful little wine, and it's a wine that I plan on having on my Thanksgiving dinner table, because I think it's a rosé with some richness, a little bit of maturity, but still very vigorous and youthful on the palate. And it's a wine that has some legs and will keep it going for quite a little while longer.